thank you all for coming out to the Plan Mattapan meeting. We appreciate you all taking the time out of your evening and welcome you obviously to this meeting. Before we begin, I did want to introduce two of our interpretation services. So we have Spanish interpretation by Sofia.
Hola, mi nombre es Sofía Picul, soy una intérprete de español. Si necesitan mis servicios, voy a estar sentada. I'm a Spanish interpreter. My name is Sofía Picul. If there is anybody who speaks Spanish, I'm available. I'll be seated over there.
And then we have Christy interpreting in Haitian Creole.
Bonsoir tout le monde, mon nom c'est Christy Bella, moi c'est interprète haïtien pour aujourd'hui. Et si nous t'aimons utiliser service moi, m'a chita derrière ensemble avec interprète espagnol non. Hi everyone, my name is Christy Bellaby. I will be the Haitian Creole interpreter for this evening, also French. And if anyone needs to utilize my services, I will be sitting in the back alongside with my interpreter, Ray.
Thank you so much. All right, thank you all for coming out again. And before we begin the evening, I'd like to allow Mayor Walsh to come up and welcome you all tonight. He's welcomed here and we're excited to have him, so.
Thank you very much, Muggsy. And I want to thank the interpreters for being here as well tonight. And I want to thank, most importantly, the residents of Mattapan for being here. I was just looking at some stats. There's been 105 engagements on this plan alone since we launched the plan. There's been 55 plus community meetings, chats with planners. There's been one-on-one meetings going on in the different neighborhoods, different areas of the neighborhood. Workshops, neighborhood walk-alongs. There was a Haitian community conversation. So when you think about this plan and what we're doing here, we're throwing a wide net out there, if you will, in the community to try and get as many people engaged in the conversation as possible. I want to thank you for being here tonight. This idea of planning Mattapan came about a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, when we started talking about the city and really looking at development happening in the city. And what was happening was, and not a lot of it was going on in Mattapan. At the state hospital site there was, but what was happening was there was one conversation about projects and not a comprehensive conversation about the neighborhood. And what's happened in the city over the last, when I became the mayor in 2014, what we were going through was this incredible growth in the city. And companies were coming in and people were buying, building properties and building housing and building things, but there was really no plan for housing. And what came of that was a shortage of housing. And we had to launch a housing plan that you know about. And we launched a housing plan to create 69,000 units of new housing by the year 2030. We've built 32,000 units of housing and we're permitting other housing now and moving it forward. But you have to plan a community to keep up with the potential growth that happens in the community. The second part of that, and this neighborhood has already been part of it, the extension of the Fairmont line and making investments in the train, in the bus lanes. You're doing that, but again, there wasn't a plan around, as we expand the Fairmont line, what do we build around those stations? I was at Talbot Norfolk meeting last night, Civic Association, and we were talking about, I remember when I was a state representative, we were talking about the Four Corner Station, we were talking about the Uplands Corner Station, and we were talking about this is what's gonna happen down the road. And what they thought that we would build it and it would come. And what didn't happen necessarily is a lot of the development around those stations initially, because there wasn't a planning process about what does the community want there. And what you're doing tonight, and what you've been doing for the last year, if you will, some of you, is designing and planning what your neighborhood should look like. So as we go into and bringing new businesses into Boston, and people start to say, well, we want to build in Mattapan, we want to go to Mattapan because that's happening every day, as you know. We want to make sure we have a comprehensive plan to deal with the transportation, to deal with the environment in some cases, to deal with the educational system, and we're working with our schools on saying, what do we do with the population growing in Mattapan? If you don't have enough schools, do we need to build a new school in Mattapan? We're talking about that. How does that work with the Main Street in creating opportunities for our business district that businesses want to open? We don't have restaurants with liquor licenses and restaurants that we want to bring to Mattapan. And how do we do that? And how do we tie these in? And really, if you think about the people that have been around for a while, some young people over here, but you think about what happened, Star Market went up on River Street because there was a need for food. But there really wasn't a conversation about how does that impact all the other businesses in our community. So now what we're seeing that's what you're doing here tonight. And we're asking you to really think about what you want to see in your neighborhood, what you want to see your neighborhood look like. You want to see the growth in your neighborhood. We want to see what Blue Hill Ave should look like. We want to see what around the train should look like. We have the beautiful Neponset walkway that comes right into Mattapan Square right now, which I do a lot. I live literally right down the street. We have trains and buses now, more and more coming. We're looking to do more rapid transit bus lanes. How does that impact your community? How do we make sure that we have all the different amenities in your community that you're benefiting from? So I know that I'm not here to necessarily give you a speech, and I apologize, but I want to thank you. Mattapan is a very special part of Boston. It's a very special neighborhood. A lot of you that are in this room, many of you are homeowners, you've been here for generations. And there's been a lot of focus on your community. Dan Cullinane and Russell Holmes have put a lot of emphasis on the state and making investments in Mattapan. We're making investments on the city side of Mattapan. And now it's also time to benefit from the private development, whether it's shops or stores or restaurants or whatever it might be. How do we get more and more of them in the community so we have more to do? So I just want to say thank you for the opportunity to come by. I don't think I'm supposed to take questions, but if anyone has a question for me, I'll take a couple questions. If you want to ask me something. Yes?
What has been your latest project so far, in making our streets safer?
My latest project, making our streets safer? I think we've done a lot of work on it. Well, unfortunately, this year, we've seen an uptick, a little bit uptick in the last couple of weeks here in Boston, in violence in our city. And we usually have what's called a summer strategy meeting. We usually have it around April, May, and this year we had it last week. So we're working with our police department to try and stay on top of what's going on in the neighborhoods, trying to find out. The violence that we're experiencing in Boston appears to be isolated incidences in different places. None of it appears connected. I had a conversation with the commissioner yesterday because I was concerned about it. And we're going to continue to stay active in that role. We're also working with our community centers and coming up with a real good plan. And summer jobs is something that's important as well. We want to make sure that every young person that wants access to a summer job gets access to a summer job. And we're expanding mentorship programs. There's a lot of different things that are happening. But yeah, I was a little concerned, because we had for the last 6, 7 years, our crime rate's gone really down, but we've had incidents where violence has happened, where people have lost their life, the grandmother up the street, and some other things that have happened over the last 12 or 14 months here in Mattapan. We want to make sure that you live in safe neighborhoods. Well, you live in safe neighborhoods. You want to make sure your neighborhoods continue to stay safe. Any other questions? Comments? Yes, sir.
What opportunities are you creating for future minority-owned development companies?
We have our Office of Economic Development has a whole department inside there on small business and creating opportunities for small business. And we have God bless you, experiences and loans and things like that. And we also have we also work to recruit big companies into Boston. So we have a lot. Natalia's over here. If you grab Natalia, if you're looking to talk about business, Natalia from Economic Development is here tonight. And work with the main streets and the business districts. We work with all the groups. So we do that. Yes?
You spoke about how Mattapan is a neighborhood that really thinks about homeownership. What are you doing to make sure that we can continue to have, especially with young minority people, having homeowners here?
We've done a couple things. Number one, we have an office of financial empowerment, which that office is to help you build credit and help you financially. So if you want to buy a home and you're young and you're in the room and you're like, how am I ever going to buy a home? I think the first stop, I would say, stop by the Office of Financial Empowerment. Because buying a home is very complicated. When I bought my home, I was 32 years old, I think I was, when I bought my first home. And my credit was okay, but you really, if you at 21, 22, 23 start thinking about that, you can really learn to build your wealth. Number one. Number two, we have programs, first-time home buyer programs in the city of Boston. We have right here, we have representatives from D&D. Take a first-time home buyer program because it helps you. We also have programs that we're helping people with how to obtain homes and looking at, in this year's budget, we're going to be looking at some money for not necessarily for down payments, but for down payments and things like that. So there's a lot of programs. And what really happens, a lot of people don't think to ask. And they just think like they're on their own and they're in their home and they're stressed out, like I'm never gonna buy a home. When in fact, you just kind of punch a few buttons on a computer, tie into our home center program and move forward. A little separate from that, any seniors in the room that own your own home, or if you know people that need boilers in their house and things like that, we have a program in the city of Boston that do repairs in people's homes as well. So you should tie into that as well. If you know somebody at home that might have an old boiler in the basement, right now it's probably not the ideal time to change that, but April, May, June is a good time to do it, and they do a good job. Or if you want to put a handicap ramp on your house or things like that, we have opportunities that can help you. Yes.
When we think, you mentioned like the growth of Boston, and I think about Dorchester, South End, things like that. From that, like as we plan for Mattapan, is there anything that specifically that we are focused on doing differently, or that worked in that?
Yeah, I think that, you know, quite honestly, I was a state rep in Dorchester for 16 years. Dorchester, Mattapan, parts of Roxbury, Hyde Park, parts of Hyde Park, people never, when I went to a civic meeting in my neighborhood, no one ever came with a proposal to build housing. No one ever came with a proposal to build a building. No one ever came with new ideas. It was always going to Charlestown or Southie or somewhere else and not coming to Dorchester or Mattapan. And now we're starting to see that. So I think that one bit of advice I'd say to people is keep an open mind. Think about density, because it matters. If we bring businesses will come to a neighborhood where people are. If we don't have people using the business district, businesses aren't gonna open there. We can talk about it all day, but if you have a restaurant that no one's gonna go to because there's nobody, everyone goes to bed at night early and there's not enough younger people or restaurants for older people or restaurants for everyone, I would say keep an open mind. And in Dorchester, and I'm not gonna speak for Representative Russell Holmes, but I think me and Russell were kind of in the same category. We both state reps together, and like, we didn't have the same problems our colleagues had with overdevelopment. We didn't have the problem our colleagues had with development. And I think having that problem is a good problem a little bit. I'm not saying completely change the dynamics of a neighborhood, but to open up a little bit and welcome people in to have the conversation. I think that's key. Yes?
I've been to other meetings like this before. Now, I know that there are 317 projects that have been approved to be developed right here in Mattapan. Aside from that, I understand that this neighborhood has more affordable housing, more available housing than any other neighborhood in the city. So what are your plans for before you can go into like what you want to develop, what's being done about the vacant properties?
There's not a lot of vacant property available that we own in the city. In 2015, we bundled a lot of, I don't know if that's the right word, but we put a lot of property together to have RFPs out there where people could buy buy 1, 2, 3 family homes, build them, and then sell them as first time homes. We don't own a lot of land anymore. A lot of our land is out on the street, it's gone. There are some small lots adjacent to people's homes, you know, unbuildable, that's out there, but there's not a lot of big projects, there's not a lot of property out there anymore. Our vacancy rate, we don't have a lot of vacant property either, a lot of vacant apartments, that is. Business is a little different, but we don't have a lot of vacant apartments, and that's putting a real strain on the housing crunch because it's a supply and demand issue. And what I mean by that is that the demand for housing in Boston right now, all neighborhoods in Boston, is really high, and the supply of housing is not there. So that allows people who own buildings to kind of put the rents up to prices where they're higher. So when we talk about building when we talk about building housing in a neighborhood, particularly on areas like bigger roads and big spaces that are open, I think that's something that we should be for. I think we should be doing more of that, because the more supply you put on the market, you'll see eventually, what we've seen now last year, we saw leveling off of rents. Okay, so we've hopefully plateaued and stayed. And what we want to do now is we don't want to see the rents continue to go up, because if they continue to go up, that means that more people are going to be pushed out. What we want to see is the rent stabilize and kind of go this way a little bit if we can in some neighborhoods. And the only way you do that is by putting more supply on the market. Storefronts, open storefronts, a whole different situation. That's a whole different thing, and there's a lot of different reasons for that. It depends on the neighborhood and the economics around it. To this gentleman's point over here, if you're a new business and you want to open a space, and you have the money to create your business and learn the business and kind of get it started, but you don't have the money to do repairs on your storefront, well, that's a whole different ballgame. And that might prohibit you from opening up a storefront. That's why we do have a program in the city that works on storefront improvements and things like that to work. And that's what Main Streets is doing as well, working with Main Streets and creating opportunities to find more opportunities for more businesses. That's the intent behind it. One last question for anybody. Yes?
There is a vacant Catholic school at the corner of Madison and Freeman.
Yeah.
I'm worried about what's going to happen because there's so many apartment buildings around there. Is there a restriction on what?
I think that's the Archdiocese of Boston and St. Angela's. Yes, and I'm going to be sitting down with the Archdiocese to talk about some of the empty schools, and they have a couple churches in Boston that are open. There's one in South Boston, St. Vincent's. There's some other places. So I'm going to be sitting down with the Catholic Church along with the BPDA. I think it's on the schedule either next week or the week after that we're going to be talking about their property to see what their intention is behind their property. They have a piece in Chinatown. Colonel Cushing bought a building years ago, and he turned it over to an order of nuns that no longer exist. So it's an empty building, and the community in Chinatown wants that building to do low-income housing. So we're trying to work with these different parcels that are available. The St. Angela's parcel is a big parcel, so it's something that I know a lot of people are concerned about. Personally, I'd love to grab it and put a nice K-6 school there, but we'll see what happens. One last question, now, maybe if you have any. Yes, sir.
Yeah, follow up on, have you guys considered bringing back rent control?
It's being discussed right now on a nationwide level. At the end of the day, rent control doesn't solve the problem because it's still a problem of supply and demand, but it's being discussed. LA is looking at it, Los Angeles is looking at it, different cities in America looked at it, New York looked at it, New York did it, and what happened in New York when they did it is 40% of the real estate market stopped. I mean, people just stopped buying there. So I think it's a conversation I know the council's gonna have. I know it's a conversation happening at the legislature right now. We're joined also by Ricardo Arroyo, City Councilor Ricardo Arroyo, who's a new city councilor who hit the ground running. He's been in work now for almost 8 weeks. He's doing a good job. Senator Nick Collins' office is represented here. Representative Holmes is here. I don't know if any other electors are here. I apologize, but you'll come in. So there's a lot of conversation that'll be happening in and around those different spaces over the course of the next few months. I think the issue is, for Boston, for us, anything we do, almost anything we do in Boston, we need to get approval, legislative approval. It happened probably around I think it was around the 30s or 40s. The powers that be at the state at the time took away a lot of the power of the city of Boston, thinking the city couldn't govern it. And it's called home rule petition. And every city and state has different ways of doing things. In New York City, you can raise taxes as a city. In Boston, we can't. So there's a lot of different pieces of complicated pieces that we have to deal with.
One last
Yes.
how can us, like the community and the youth, stay in contact with you? In my opinion, actually in a lot of cases, we haven't been able to like connect with you that far, like with your offices or anything. How can we stay connected and like see what you're doing for the youth or like be there in the moment?
Oh, we do, absolutely.
Yeah, I'm just trying to get like your schedules and information or anything.
Yeah, your first point of contact from the neighborhood is Rudney. She's right here. That's your first point of contact.
Thank you.
And then you also have, through the BCUF centers, through the schools, and it's pretty, when I say this, it's not simple. It can be simple. So your first point of contact is Rudney. And then if you want to get like somebody out here to talk about public safety, we have an office of public safety. If you want to have somebody out here talking about street worker program and what's going on street worker program, summer job program, all those different things. We have a Mayor's Youth Council that we have. There's representatives from Mattapan on the Mayor's Youth Council. We also have, I'm trying to think of some of the other things we have. There's a ton of things we have. So.
My question was more like, do you like have a next step for like a meeting where you're kind of need to like sit down with a bunch of you so that we can talk to organize it?
Let's do it.
Like, do you have what you're making?
Not that I'm aware of, but we'll make one. Before I leave, I'll give you a number you call.
Okay, thank you.
All right? All right, I'm gonna turn the mic back over because I dominated too much. I just want to end with thanking you for being here tonight because I know you care about your neighborhood. I know you care about your community. Thank you for being here. Mattapan is awesome. And those of you that are longtime residents know that. Let's not be afraid to say that. Let's send a powerful message. We got press in the room tonight. I'm glad they're here. Let's just remind the press that's in the room, maybe not you, but everyone else in the room that don't just show up when something happens on the street that's bad, because that's too often. You know, when there's a violent act in the street, it's all over TV, it's on the front page of the paper. Tonight's a great night. Tonight's a positive night. Tonight's about people in this room care about their neighborhood. So make sure you take a quick glance of all the people in this room that actually are here because they love their neighborhood, they care about their neighborhood. And thank you very much. Muggsy.
Thank you so much, Mayor Walsh, and thanks again everyone for coming out tonight. We're going to start the night off, but first I did want to say we do have catering by Blue Mountain. They are located on Morton. For anyone who has yet to go there, definitely go. It's really good, great. So check that out. Of course, always. And then, yeah, so we're going to kick off the night. We're going to do a short presentation, and then we have a really awesome activity for you all. You might be wondering why there's a bunch of paper that is very colorful and Legos in a bag at your tables. We will go over that, so let's get this going. All right. Oh, actually, I have one more thing. Where's Fatima? Fatima has an announcement from the Greater Mattapan Neighborhood Council.
Hi, good evening everyone. My name is Fatima Ali-Salam. I'm the chair of the Greater Mattapan Neighborhood Council. This coming Saturday is the second Greater Mattapan Neighborhood Council 2020 election. It's from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m. right here in this cafeteria. And actually, one of our candidates is here. Can you come forward? Nakia Jean-Charles. She's actually 17 years old. And Mayor Walsh may not realize it, but she actually is a former serving member of the Mayor's Youth Council in 2018.
She knows how to get me if she's on the Mayor's Council. You come to the office and lobby me.
Yes, she also serves as the current outreach director on the March for Our Lives Boston. So we're really excited to have her as a candidate and to show the rest of the city of Boston that, you know, Mattapan knows how to raise them up. So come out and vote, please. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much, Fatima. All right, here we go. Just as a recap of everything we've done up until now, as Mayor Walsh stated, we have started this process in October of 2018. And so far we've had about 11 workshops. Today we're going to be having a workshop that focuses on the corridors of Mattapan. So that's why you're all here, and that's what we're going to be doing today. So for the beginning, once we started this process, we talked a lot about what we wanted to see in the neighborhood, what our values were, what our goals were, and now we're talking about really how do we get that to happen? How do we get that to be something that occurs in Mattapan? So this is the vision statement that we all put together in the a few meetings ago, and it's a culmination of everything we've heard, and we worked together to create the statement. So in that statement, you'll see these main and major themes, which are around housing, jobs and businesses, mobility, and people and places. So how do we get this vision statement to be implemented through this planning process? That's pretty much what we're going to be doing from now until the plan becomes a real life plan. So in one of our meetings, we discussed that the way you get these things to get implemented is through the pieces of the neighborhood. You can't do everything by addressing one thing. So all these goals out here, can't be achieved just through the corridor. It can't be achieved just through the squares and nodes or just the residential fabric. So we really need to think about how those all work together. So last month, we talked about the residential fabric, and this month we're going to be talking about the corridors. This is not the only conversation we're going to be having about this. This is the first of many, of course. I know you love working with me on this, so bear with me. We're going to be doing this for quite some time. But the corridors are today's main focus. So this will link directly to your activity. So at your tables, and when you walked in, you should have received a couple things. One of the things is this packet right here. It's like 2 pages. It opens up to an activity. Just want to make sure everyone has one. If you don't, we can bring some around. All right. And then you received a tip sheet, which is a large piece of paper with, okay, awesome. I see a lot of people with it. Great. And what we're pretty much going to do is use this activity throughout the night to talk about how corridors implement the vision statement. So this is kind of what that all looks like. So here's that packet, these 2 pages, and then this is just a beautiful graphic that represents what we're going to do this evening. So before I get into exactly what we're going to be talking about, I'm going to hand it off to Jonathan, who's with Mass Design Group, to kind of go through the goals of the exercise.
All right, thank you, Muggsy. So I'm going to be brief since we're running short on time, but ultimately we're looking at the corridors. And I think one thing that we want to emphasize is that not all the corridors are created equal. All right, so we have Blue Hill, Morgan, River, Cummins. These are the corridors that we've discussed with you guys as sort of what resonates in terms of areas that we need to focus on. Realizing that looking at the various goals we have for this project, each of those corridors will play a different role in meeting those goals. So again, looking at this sort of collage, River Street at the top, Morton, Cummins, Blue Hill, each corridor has its own quality, character. The ideas of housing and jobs look different in each corridor. So I think one of the things we want to look at today is how does that start to play out kind of spatially, right? At the same time, when we're looking at how we invest in the corridors and how we sort of act on our vision statements for the future of Mattapan, we really want to kind of sort of organize things into these sort of 4 categories: housing, jobs and businesses, people and places, and mobility. And that helps us to begin to track these track our actions in these sort of 4 categories. So when we look at housing, for example, housing in River, Morton, Cummins, Blue Hill, again, different scale, different character when we look at each of these places. Something we want to keep in mind and the activity when we figure out how do we want to, sort of positively address housing moving forward. And again, in the previous meetings we've heard a lot from you all relative to what we want to see in housing, the idea of preserving affordable housing, preserving home ownership, providing more opportunities for young people to sort of age in the community. And that's sort of translated and helps sort of strengthen this value statement that as a part of this plan, we are supporting inclusive, equitable development with an emphasis on affordable housing. We can start to track that with these goals of home ownership, providing opportunities for a mix of housing types, and participation in more housing programs. So again, looking at jobs and businesses, this is how visually they start to kind of play out along the corridors. The idea that as we grow Mattapan, how can we create more creative jobs? How can we think more about job training, living wage, providing more like live work opportunities to rethink how jobs can work in Mattapan. At the same time, we want to enhance opportunities to keep people in Mattapan so that businesses can thrive in Mattapan and capturing the wealth within the community. One thing I do want to plug is in May, we're going to have a full session, a deep dive workshop just on jobs and businesses alone. Looking at mobility, we certainly understand that there are challenges in getting around Mattapan and getting from Mattapan throughout the rest of the city. So that's something that we've heard, and I think one thing that we want to look at moving forward is how to strengthen the connectivity from Mattapan to the rest of the city with an emphasis on public safety. And then looking lastly at people and places, we certainly understand and respect and want to reflect Mattapan and its people in this planning process and think about how that starts to come into play. How do we bring in arts and culture into the sort of physical public realm that we're talking about within the neighborhood? So again, this is stuff that we've heard from you guys in previous meetings, reflecting the history of Mattapan, reflecting arts and culture, and then making sure that Mattapan, this plan is for the community that already lives here. And again, so that is sort of the last part of this vision statement. Again, understanding how we can celebrate Mattapan, celebrate places where people gather, and creating sort of a quantity and diversity of public spaces as part of this planning process, preserving and strengthening the existing cultural assets within Mattapan. So this all shows how we're taking the vision statement, unpacking what we've heard, and trying to sort of sort of make it actionable with these goals that we're going to talk about in this activity. And now I'm going to back over to Muggsy.
All right, thanks, Jonathan. So I know that was a lot. because it is a lot. We understand that. The presentation will be online, and all of these goals that are listed here are actually on the front page of that handout. So what we're going to be doing is looking at those goals throughout this process. And one of the first things we're going to do, oh, you have this? Thank you. Here we go. So one of the first things we're going to do is actually is to rank out of underneath housing, jobs and economy, mobility, jobs and economy, mobility, and people and places are the goals listed. So we'll spend the first 5 minutes of the activity ranking them at our tables. So that will be the first thing that we'll do. Then the second page of the activity, so if everyone just wants to open that up, and we'll have facilitators go through this with you all at your tables following the presentation. So the second page, it asks you to choose community improvements you want to see. And it also asks you to choose future development types that you want to see, or you want to talk about and think about. So in order to assist in the selection of both the community improvements and the buildings, we have that tip sheet. So I'm just gonna really quickly, so I can hold it up. This thing right here. So there's a bigger version at your table too to share, but every person should have one of these. And what it does is it explains kind of what the selection means. So what does an affordable housing unit, what is it? How do you get an affordable housing unit? What is the point value? So how do you kind of pay for an affordable housing unit? And how does it meet the goals of Plan Mattapan? So each one of these selections has an explanation of that. So that way, if you're trying to make a selection, a specific one, you can kind of read up on it to see how it's going to meet a specific goal. And then, finally, this is what I think is the most fun, to be honest with you. The last thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take those selections you made, kind of think through, what does that look like on a corridor? How do we actually see that come to fruition? Like, when you put it all together, when you put a pocket park, a house, or whatever together, how does that actually look? And so we have, your facilitator will bring some diagrams of the street, so of whatever corridor it might be, and then you'll be assembling and putting together these Legos that represent, so we'll talk about this at your tables, but each Lego represents something different. So the red Legos, these like stacked Legos, represent commercial improvements. This is one. This, I broke it. Don't tell their facilitator. Oh, I'm your facilitator, so I guess there's that. This one, not this whole thing, just a piece of this one, would be housing above commercial. So we'll break that apart. And then we have triple deckers, we have affordable units, and we have single family housing. So we'll get to play with these and kind of see what does it look like on the corridor, why, what do you get from something like that? So what do you get from a commercial improvement or from a housing development or whatnot? So that's kind of the goal for the activity. And then we'll talk about what we want to see and why, and we're going to photograph them so we can log them, because what this will end up doing is translate to our next meeting. So we're trying to figure out, we're to try to figure out and work with you to make development more predictable. So in order for us to understand what is acceptable, what isn't, and what it is the things that we want to see and how we get them, we have to kind of think through these activities and then pose a scenario. So if we kind of go through this and we'll all have different corridors, we'll all have different designs. When we kind of put those designs together, what does it look like? And do we agree with what it looks like? And so that's kind of the opportunity for tonight. And when we have our meeting, it's called the Corridors Report Back. We take this and we'll show you exactly what you guys have proposed and what you guys are thinking. So we'll take pictures and we'll record them, and then we'll share them on our website, obviously. But we'll also have a report back where we have a formal discussion about what's going to happen. So it's 7 o'clock, almost. It's 6:52, so we're good. We're decent. We're going to have two facilitators at your table each, and then we're going to go through the activity, and then after we're done with the activity, I'm going to ask that we leave about 5-10 minutes so that we can actually kind of talk to each other about what it is that came out at our tables. Maybe each table, one person can say a few words about the activity. But that's pretty much it. So if you haven't grabbed food, please do. But otherwise, if you're not at a table, please sit at a table and join us in the conversation. And your facilitators will be joining you in approximately 5 seconds. You have 5 seconds, facilitators. All right, thank you.